Miranda Devine, New York Post columnist, Fox News contributor, host of Pod Force One, and now she's hosting the special Cocaine at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, available right now on Fox Nation. So, Miranda, what attracted you to this story?
Well, hi, Brian. Look, obviously it's because the Hunter Biden laptop I'd been covering for so long, and we'd been reporting that Hunter Biden at the time had been pretty much living off and on at the White House with his wife and his child in the residence. And he, then suddenly this cocaine is found, and he's the most famous person in the White House who, at least previously, had a big cocaine problem. And it was all very strange. You know, there was a little baggie with cocaine found in the area near the Situation Room in the West Wing, where there are these little cubby holes to put your cell phones. And the door was unlocked, and we were told initially that it was found elsewhere in the West Wing. And then we're told, oh no, it was found oddly in this little, at the very edge of this little cubbyhole. And then they closed the investigation within 11 days. They said there were no fingerprints, there was no DNA evidence, none of it, as Donald Trump said at the time, passed the sniff test.
Right. Here's Tim Burchett, also on the special, Cut 47.
I could read the agents' faces. They knew they were going to get blistered by members of Congress. To me, it just reeked of a setup, and they knew it, and we knew it. I mean, it was comical almost that they were forced to say all this to us.
Say what?
Well, tell them that there was no evidence, that it was impossible to find out who it was. I mean, at one point, the White House even blamed construction workers who had been in the White House at the time. It was a desperate scramble to avoid culpability. And, I don't know if it was Hunter, it could have been someone else, but Susan Crabtree did some good reporting from her sources in the Secret Service, many of whom were not happy about the way this was handled, and found that actually they did find enough DNA to run a check through the criminal database, and that there was a partial match to someone in the White House. So someone working at the West Wing anyway, working or there.
What do you mean? So who was it?
We don't know. I mean, it could be.
But how did you know there was a match? Who told you there was a match?
No, Susan Crabtree, who's a reporter for Real Clearly Politics, reported this from her sources in the Secret Service. She has very good sources. And look, this has been terrible for the Secret Service. And of course, after that, we had the Butler rally when they did not protect Donald Trump adequately. And so there have been problems with the Secret Service. And I would say they stem from the fact that Joe Biden politicized it from the get-go. He put in one of his favorites to head it, who had been on his personal detail when he was vice president. And then they covered up this dramatic story. And, it is unheard of, as any law enforcement people will tell you, to destroy the evidence within a couple of weeks of this crime being discovered. And it is a crime in DC to have this amount of cocaine. So why they destroyed it? And apparently the Secret Service personnel that were instructed to destroy it didn't want to do that. So there is mystery upon mystery, which is why Kash Patel and the FBI have decided to reopen this case. And they should have enough evidence from the investigation that hasn't been destroyed to put two and two together and at least be transparent with the American public, because we all knew it was a cover-up. And if it wasn't Hunter, I think this was incredibly unfair to him, because as the most famous former crackhead in the White House, obviously all fingers pointed to him. He has since claimed it wasn't him, and how preposterous that he would leave it in that cubbyhole. But that's a pretty weird denial, because the evidence is that it was actually found elsewhere and put in the cubbyhole. That part of the transcript that's been retained from FOI, from the Secret Service investigation, that was redacted. So the FBI and Kash Patel ought to have access to that and know where exactly in the White House was that cocaine baggie first found. And, the other thing was that Karine Jean-Pierre, who was the White House press spokesman at the time, just raised more suspicions with her abject denials that, oh no, the first family wasn't even there. Well, yes, they were there when the baggie was found. And she said, oh, they were gone all of, July 2nd or the Friday, whatever it was. And in fact, they were there until 6 p.m. So it was all very dishonest. And that was why it became a bigger story than it might have.
It's amazing that it went away. It's just amazing that, and there wasn't a lot of curiosity. Just the same thing. There's not a lot of curiosity about his diminished mental ability. Just lastly, just one more cut from your special, as Tim Burchett, the congressman from Tennessee, said this sounds like a setup. Cut 48.
That cocaine had a pair of legs. Originally, it was told to be in one area, and then many sources had said that. And then, in fact, no, it was found in another area, the one area where there weren't any cameras. They had to move the cocaine and get it somewhere in a hurry.
So obviously they looked into it. They knew there was a problem with it, but they just closed the investigation. And now where does it stand?
Well, it stands with the FBI. They're doing an investigation. I can't imagine that it should take them very long. Maybe they're interviewing people who were at the White House at the time. They could be doing that. They really ought to, but we were told by the Secret Service when they wrapped up in record time their initial investigation that, oh no, there were just too many people in that area to investigate, which is ridiculous. I mean, the White House would have to be the most secure location on the planet.
So I want to bring you to KJP's book that's coming out. I don't want to sell her books, but I'm just fascinated by her take. She basically has left the Democratic Party because they left Joe Biden. She said that she talks about this being surreal. Biden seemed to be totally at peace after he made his decision, but I was stunned. My feelings a blur. I was angry and sad. I was enraged and heartbroken. This man had given 50 years of his life to serving the American people, and in the end, he's been treated so poorly by the members of his own party. It was horrible. The Democratic Party defined my life, my career. Everything I've done to make people's lives better had been connected to it. The party was a vehicle that allowed me to have a front seat on history, working first on Obama's presidential campaign, but also making history, as usual, as a black woman, openly queer person to ever be at the White House press secretary. Your thoughts about the outrage she feels that Joe Biden couldn't finish out his doddering term where he basically was a blank slate for 4 years?
I mean, that is so typical of her. She was the most self-engrossed person, I think, ever to have stood on a podium. And she was terrible at her job.
Horrible.
Just, you see Carolyn Levitt now and how she commands that room, how calm she is, how full of information she is. What a contrast to Karine Jean-Pierre. And Donald Trump jokes all the time about pretty low bar, he said, for him and Caroline, considering their predecessors. But I guess she has to be loyal to Joe Biden because there's no way she would ever have had a job like that if it weren't for the fact that Joe Biden cared about nothing else but identity politics. So she owes him big time.
Miranda, they tried to get her out. Didn't they try to set her up with Angie's List? Anything to get her out. She was terrible at her job, and she wouldn't do it. And then we know, too, that Joe Biden couldn't have meetings because he was incapable. She hid that, and she thinks that we don't know it yet. She doesn't understand the auto pen in the story is real, that Jake Tapper, of all people, wrote a book that he wasn't basically there. We know that she is not only vacuous as an individual, but she had no information from the chief executive, which is why she wasted everyone's time in the press room every single day. And now she says the mistake was not standing by Joe Biden. Did you see Joe Biden? I feel terrible because he's got cancer, but he had cancer then too, by the way. I don't know if she knew it. And now he looks like a shell of himself, and he was a shell of himself last time we saw him.
Well, I mean, he was a shell of himself throughout his presidency. We have to be honest about that.
Yep.
Back in 2020, when he was campaigning in New Hampshire and Iowa, in January, he was a shell. So it was just outrageous that the Democratic Party foisted someone with so little cognitive ability on the American people, and they got away with it for almost 4 years. And then they tried to foist his understudy on us, Kamala Harris, who's, just as cognitively challenged, it seems, from her bizarre public utterances and her terrible book launch. I think, look, Karine Jean-Pierre, unlike Carolyn Levitt, who sits with President Trump through all his meetings, she is very smart, but she also has the ear of the president. She asks him questions, he respects her, and she's there. She sees things unfold, and she is very good at delivering a message. So she goes out to the press corps and she gives them real information that they can use in real stories. They are inundated with information. And yet, for the 4 years of Joe Biden, they never complained, really. They all stuck up for him. I went to one of those White House Press Association dinners, and they were all sucking up to Joe Biden up on the stage. It was quite shameful. And if the Fourth Estate cares about freedom of speech, etc., like they do now, they're walking out of the Pentagon and so on. Where were they during the Biden years when they were just fed complete and utter garbage, horse manure, and nothing?
And the two people who have come out should be disqualified immediately, Kamala Harris and KJP, because they knew about it. They knew how cognitively challenged he was, how much jeopardy our country was in with two hot wars at the time and China growing more aggressive by the day. And all they did try to do was cover up for him. And to this day, they still don't admit it. I mean, that's why this is, I hope at one stop that she gets legitimately grilled, because she does stay in the one excerpt I read in Newsweek that she went to The View and everyone told her what a great job she was doing.
Isn't that incredible? I think that's part of her problem, is she has quite a fragile ego. And so she surrounds herself with people who, like her sister and her brother-in-law, who pump her up, who tell her how wonderful she is. And her book is incredible. There are so many insights into her, I guess inadvertently, into who she is. There's one where she's talking about how she was upset because Dougie, her husband, was dispatched by her staff to her hotel in Philadelphia so they could have a special birthday evening. And he'd been busy traveling around the country stumping for her, and he hadn't organized a special night. And she was so disappointed. And then he gave her a present that she said was repurposed from a wedding anniversary present with the wrong date on the back. So she flounces off to take a long bath, and then she calls for a towel. But Doug is listening. He's in the other room and he's watching the baseball, and he doesn't hear her. So she texts him, or she calls him, and she's very angry with him. And he says, what's the problem? And so she said they got into it and had a big fight. She said, like every couple does. No, I don't call for my husband to bring me a towel. He's not my servant. It's insane.
Crazy.
I mean, she's like a princess.
But let me tell you something. This guy dropped the ball. I'm also looking at him. He couldn't care less. She's upset. He doesn't have a birthday present. He watches the game. I mean, I'm looking at him and saying, that's terrible. And I'm looking at her. How would you ever in a million years put that in a book? As if,
No.
Why would you? I mean, if that was a story, I would deny it, even if it was true. So
100%.
It's just so clueless. It's crazy. And then she keeps telling people that it was the closest election in a century. We know it's not true. I mean, it's numbers. It's not opinion. It's a numbers game.
I mean, she lost every single metric possible. She lost, obviously, the Electoral College. She lost the popular vote. She lost every swing state. And Donald Trump won practically every county. It was a comprehensive victory. For her to turn around at every stop on her book tour and tell these gullible audiences who seem to love her, they're called the K-Hive, these people, and they're mostly women, and they just think she's wonderful. And I think it's because they've been all their lives from school brainwashed into thinking there's going to be a female president. and it has to be a Democrat because only the Democrats aren't sexist. And it's going to happen in my lifetime. And if it doesn't happen, I'm not validated as a woman. And the only reason that a woman doesn't win, like Hillary and Kamala, is because of sexism in the country. It's ridiculous. But that's, I guess, the way they feel.
Miranda, we have so much in common. We could talk for 3 hours. In the meantime, I appreciate the minutes you gave me. Watch the full special on Fox Nation America's favorite streaming service. It's called Cocaine at 1600. And always check out Pod Force One. That is Miranda's podcast, and read her columns. Miranda, thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Brian.
Right.
And the cocaine special is unbelievable, mind-blowing.
Yeah, absolutely. And whatever you do, do not buy any of the books we talked about.